stride over, if I can say it that way.
Yeah, it is such a unique thing just to see such a big coalition already. So to try and imagine a bigger coalition coming in would be even more unique. However, I think what we can always say is that just when you think you know everything about nature, that's really one big curveball. So I'd never say impossible, but sure, yeah, it would be quite a scene to see. But they seem to be holding strong at the moment, and have had a very interesting history. And the word of the Mapogos throughout the guides and rangers out in this area spreads like wildfire, and yeah, it's exhilarating to actually see them, to be that close to such a strong coalition of males and just feel that power. We've had a few experiences that actually, Peter, you found them a few weeks ago with Alex on that buffalo carcass. Yeah. You made a very good point on pointing out how intense that stare is while they were staring directly into the lens almost, and it just goes straight through you. It is just unbelievable.
Yeah, no, they're certainly special lions. I mean, again, that's the kind of question we can sit about and might even do after we say goodnight and talk about it more. But I think Jan's point was very good. In other words, before anything, just first of all, I think the chance of a bigger coalition forming is not that much, just purely because the chance of 5-male coalition is quite limited already. But Jan's point was valid. I think before anything really happens, there'll have to be a weakening within the ranks of the Mapogos first, either by one or two of them getting old, which is possible, but you know that's 4 or 5 years away. But more likely, one or two of them, the male that's often by himself, gets caught by 2 or 3 other lions. You know, obviously, then by himself, he might be in trouble. Or a snake bite or a buffalo. You know, they caught a big buffalo the other day, and certainly they're strong lions, but a buffalo is still a buffalo. So you know, that could happen. There's a variety of things that could weaken the coalition, and then maybe leave a gap. But more likely, then it won't be a case of them getting displaced. Again, keep in mind that these males have got such a vast territory now that they've got multiple prides. So if the coalition got weakened, it's more likely that they'll get pushed off maybe from one area, maybe lose one of the males in the process or something. But I think for them to just get displaced out of the area that they're dominating now, which is very large, would have to be unique circumstances beyond what we can almost imagine. Just for interest's sake, I've mentioned before, but a good friend of mine, Dr. John Grinnell, who researched lions for a long time, the largest coalition he ever studied in East Africa was 7 males. They took over 3 territories combined as a coalition, and then after they're done, so they split into groups of into 3 coalitions basically of 3, 2, and 2, and then spend the rest of the years in those. And then spend the rest of the years in those groups with the pride. So there's quite a few varieties when you start dealing with these large numbers. Also out of interest's sake is that lions can distinguish when they listen to roaring up to 5 males. So if the Mapogos are all roaring and there's another male lying somewhere in the bush some distance away, he would know there's 5 lions roaring. Anything more than that, they don't really have the ability to count, if that makes any sense. Most likely because it's almost never the case, unless obviously you have the females roaring and so on. So there's a lot of potential stories to hypothesize about and talk about, and I'm sure we will still work through lots of them over the next while. But I think to answer the premise of that question is that most likely the Mapogos will be around for quite a few years. I would say 4 or 5 years at least. 1, maybe 2 generations of cubs without having too much hassles. But then again, you know, tomorrow a big herd of buffalo decide they've had enough of the Mapogos, and 500 buffalo take on 5 lions, and you know, numbers do count in the end.
There's a lot of action happening out there in the bush. You just never know how it's going to turn out. Yeah. Well, that'll bring us to our next question, and our final question for the evening, from Phil and Jill in the UK. They've pointed out that very often we get out the vehicles while we're out on our game yards, and walk around through the bush, perhaps following tracks, to go fetch something to explain to everyone. And what are the risks of snake bite? Do we wear some protective gear? Do we just take the risk? How do we actually deal with that? What are the risks when it comes to snakes out there? You have a little chuckle over there. It sounds like you have something to say, Jan.
No, I was just thinking. Sorry. It's if out in the bush, obviously the chances of getting snake bitten is much larger. But I mean, we had a close experience here in the FCC with Puff, Ada, and Alex came to save me. with a very big puff adder. I mean, it happened right here, and I mean, it's still the bush. It's a couple of meters closest or to the closest fence. So, but yeah, it is. I think the possibility is probably bigger than in here getting bitten by a snake in here in the FCC than in the bush, though.
Probably true, huh?
Yeah.
Well, my father used to always say, Phil and Jill, and I'm sure lots of other people that might be concerned about snakes as well. He always said that the two most dangerous things in Africa are snakes and dehydration, and bear helps for both of them. So I'm never too worried about snake bite, as long as we've got a few beers back here. But you know, that's all in good jest. I think the chances of getting bitten by a snake just randomly walking around is certainly possible, but very, very small. I know, Marco, I'm sure you do as well. I know probably 10 different people that I've worked with over time that have been bitten by snakes. Every single one of them, either in handling or catching or moving or playing or some variety of that. You know, personally, again, I'm sure all of us at some stage or another have stood very close to snakes, almost stepped on them, almost trod on them, and they try and get away, or they warn you, or they do something. The chance of actually getting bitten is possible, but you know, I would say very small. You'd be more likely to, you know, hurt yourself in some other way.
Yeah, I think
the Isle of Jack or something.
Unfortunately, we have been our minds have been played with some pretty hectic Hollywood films about crazy snakes and really aggressive snakes and so on. And snakes, of all means, they can be extremely dangerous animals. But the snakes we get out of here don't feed on humans, you know. So I mean, the chance of a snake actually. Let's hope it never gets over there. We'll have to change industries if it gets to that point. But the snakes don't feed on us, so they won't actively go out and look for a person. Now, snakes don't. They have fantastic hearing organs, not exposed, but hearing organs that will pick up our vibrations. Now, imagine a small reptile, a meter, 2 meters, even 3 meters, picks up the vibrations of a 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 kilogram animal as a human approaching them. This is a potential threat for this animal. They could actually be more injured by us than we could be by them. So it's more than likely that they would move out of the way to kind of a defensive position to really get away out of our path. There are some snakes, however, that which is the one that you were talking about, that can be quite lethargic and like to just curl up in a little ball and not move and hope you don't see them, the puff adder. Yeah, I mean, there's always the risk in an unlucky situation that it could happen, but with the right precautions and understanding the animals, chances are, again, unlikely. You just got to be careful.
I think it's a risk small enough that you don't have to consciously be aware of it. You know, that's going to happen, then it's going to happen. I also think another point, again, just I'm sure lots of people wonder that often when we get out of the vehicle. I'm sure that that people imagine themselves in that space. But keep in mind, and I'm not saying this to be melodramatic at all, but really keep in mind that this space that we're moving around in, for all of us to some extent or another, really is home. I feel honestly more comfortable walking around out here in the bush by myself with no firearms or anti-snake venom or GPS or whatever, more at home literally than walking around on the sidewalk of a safe city that I enjoy. Just because it really is something I've grown up with to some extent and wanted to learn more about. So it really is something that you walk around with a different awareness maybe than someone that's not used to it. So it's not a case of walking around looking out for potential threats. It's more just walking around being aware of the same as you would be in a city of cars driving in the streets and you know, someone with a ladder on his shoulder. You just walk around aware.
Just different situations, different possibilities, different encounters, and yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, I feel exactly the same. I mean, I feel more at home here than I do in a city, and once you understand how things operate out here in the bush, you're able to identify what potential threats are, and these are the things you become aware of. And just from all the discussions that we've had tonight, really, about elephants coming down to snakes and the insects you have to watch out for, and but they just become part of your understanding, and you don't actively go around with this mass paranoia looking for these things. It's just things that you know and become comfortable with, and life just continues, and you enjoy it very much.
Maybe that's even partly why people like